The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days in the small mining town of Ashford. 17-year-old Emma Clark stood outside the mine supervisor's office, her thin jacket doing little to protect her from the cold. Her younger brother, Thomas, lay in bed at home, his fever raging. The medicine he needed cost more than their family had seen in months. "You understand what you're agreeing to?" Mr. Garrett, the mine supervisor, asked from behind his desk. His face was weathered, lined with years of making deals that broke families apart. Emma nodded, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. 5 years of labor. In exchange, you pay for Thomas's treatment immediately and give my mother enough to survive. Garrett slid the contract across the desk. "Sign here. You'll work in the sorting house initially. If you're strong enough, you'll move to deeper operations." Emma picked up the pen. She thought of Thomas's smile, the way he used to run through their small garden before the illness took hold. She thought of her mother's exhausted face, worn down by working 3 jobs that still weren't enough. With one stroke, she signed away her freedom. The next morning, Emma was processed like cargo. They cut her long brown hair short, gave her rough work clothes, and assigned her a number, 174. The other workers barely looked at her as she entered the sorting house, a massive warehouse where coal was separated from rock. "Keep your head down and your hands moving," an older woman named Sarah whispered to her. "Garrett's men watch for any excuse to dock pay or add time to your contract." Emma learned quickly. Her hands became calloused and black within days. The dust filled her lungs, making each breath a conscious effort. But every night, she reminded herself why she was there. Letters from her mother confirmed that Thomas was recovering. The medicine was working. Her sacrifice meant something. 3 months passed in a blur of darkness and exhaustion. Emma rarely saw sunlight. The sorting house operated in shifts that seemed designed to break the human spirit. But Emma discovered she was stronger than she knew. She also discovered she wasn't alone in her suffering. Many of the workers were there because of debt, desperation, or deception. Some had been working for decades. Their contracts mysteriously extended through penalties they never understood. The mine operation was a machine that consumed lives. One evening, as Emma hauled a basket of sorted coal, she overheard Garrett arguing with a well-dressed man in the supervisor's office. The window was cracked open, and voices carried into the yard. "I don't care what your investigation found," Garrett snarled. "There's no girl by that description here. You're wasting your time." "Mr. Garrett, the family is offering a substantial reward. A girl, approximately 17, brown eyes, possibly calling herself Emma or using another name. She disappeared from Riverton 18 years ago." Emma froze. Riverton was over 200 miles away. She'd never been there in her life. "Check your records again," the stranger continued. "The birthmark, a small crescent shape on her right shoulder. That's the identifying feature." Emma's hand instinctively went to her right shoulder, where beneath her rough work shirt lay exactly such a mark. Her mother had always told her it was unique, special, but this conversation made no sense. She'd lived her whole life in Ashford with her mother and Thomas. "I'll check the records," Garrett lied smoothly. "But I doubt you'll find what you're looking for here. These workers come and go. No one keeps detailed files." The stranger left, and Emma's mind raced. Who was looking for a girl from Riverton? Why would they think she might be here? And what did this have to do with her birthmark? That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay in the crowded dormitory where female workers were housed, staring at the ceiling. Sarah noticed her distress. "What's eating you, girl?" Sarah whispered. Emma hesitated, then told her what she'd heard. Sarah's eyes widened. "Emma, listen to me carefully. About 18 years ago, there was a scandal in Riverton. William Hartley, one of the richest men in the state, had a daughter who was kidnapped as an infant. The case was never solved. The family never stopped searching." "That has nothing to do with me," Emma protested. "I've lived here my whole life." "Have you?" Sarah asked gently. "Think about it. Do you have any memories from before you were 5 or 6? Any photographs? Birth certificates?" Emma's protests died in her throat. She realized with growing horror that she had no early memories. Her mother had always said their house burned down when Emma was small, destroying all their documents and photographs. She'd never questioned it. "You think I'm this missing girl?" Emma whispered. "I think you need to find out the truth," Sarah replied. "And I think Garrett knows more than he's saying. If you really are Hartley's daughter, that contract you signed isn't worth the paper it's written on. But Garrett won't let you go easily. That mine operates on exploitation. He's likely being paid to hide people here." The next day, Emma worked with new awareness. She watched Garrett more carefully, noticed how he kept certain files locked away, how he sometimes met with officials from town who left with heavy pockets. The mine wasn't just a business, it was a hiding place for secrets. 2 weeks later, the well-dressed stranger returned. This time he brought another man, older, with silver hair and eyes that held both wealth and deep sadness. Emma was hauling coal near the office when she saw them. "Mr. Hartley, I understand your persistence, but I've checked thoroughly," Garrett was saying. "There's no one here matching your daughter's description." Through the window, Emma caught the older man's profile. Something about the shape of his face, the set of his jaw, struck her as familiar in a way she couldn't explain. It was like looking into a mirror that showed not her reflection, but her essence. William Hartley's voice carried through the window, heavy with years of grief. "My daughter would be 17 now. Someone knows where she is. I've followed every lead, traced every possibility. The investigator found evidence that suggests she was brought to this region years ago. Sir, with all respect, this is a mining town. Children here grow up hard and fast. If your daughter is alive, she's probably far from these parts." Emma made a decision that would change everything. She stepped closer to the window, where both men could see her if they looked. She slowly rolled up her right sleeve, exposing her shoulder and the crescent-shaped birthmark. The investigator noticed first. He grabbed Hartley's arm and pointed. Both men turned to stare at Emma through the window. Time seemed to stop. William Hartley's face transformed from weary resignation to shock, then to something that looked like hope, trying to break through years of protective walls. Garrett followed their gaze and saw Emma. His face turned purple with rage. "Get back to work, 174, he shouted, but Emma didn't move. William Hartley was already moving toward the door, the investigator close behind. Emma's heart pounded as the office door flew open. "Stop right there!" Garrett positioned himself between Emma and the two men. "This worker is under contract. You have no right to interfere with mine operations." William Hartley ignored him completely, his eyes locked on Emma. Up close, she could see tears forming in those eyes that matched her own shade of deep brown. His hands shook as he reached toward her, then stopped, afraid to believe. "The birthmark," he whispered. "May I see it clearly?" Emma nodded, her own hands trembling as she pulled her sleeve higher. The crescent-shaped mark was clearly visible, identical to the one William Hartley had spent 18 years describing to investigators, artists, and anyone who would listen. "My God," he breathed. "Charlotte, my Charlotte." "My name is Emma," she said, confused. "Emma Clark." "Clark was your mother's name, your birth mother, Margaret Clark. She was your nanny." William's voice broke. "She disappeared with you the same night. We thought—" "I feared the worst for so many years." The investigator pulled out a photograph, yellowed with age. It showed a young woman holding an infant. "This is Margaret Clark, taken a week before the kidnapping. Do you recognize her?" Emma stared at the photograph. The woman looked nothing like the mother she knew, the tired, worn woman she'd left behind in Ashford. This woman was younger, fuller in the face, but there was something about her eyes. "I don't understand," Emma said. "My mother is Mary Clark. She's in Ashford taking care of my brother Thomas." "Emma, you have to listen," Sarah interjected, having followed the commotion. "I know Mary Clark. She came to Ashford about 16 years ago with a little girl she claimed was her daughter. But no one ever saw any records. No one questioned it because, well, people come here to disappear." Garrett stepped forward aggressively. "This is nonsense. The girl has a contract. 5 years of labor in exchange for debts paid. It's all legal and binding. A contract signed under false pretenses by a minor is worth nothing," the investigator shot back. "Especially when that minor is a kidnapping victim forced into labor trafficking." "Labor trafficking?" Garrett's face went from purple to white. "Now wait just a minute." "No, you wait." William Hartley's voice carried the weight of authority and barely controlled fury. My daughter, and yes, she is my daughter, that birthmark is documented in hospital records from her birth, has been held here under fraudulent circumstances. The authorities will be very interested in your operation, Mr. Garrett. I suspect they'll find numerous violations once they start investigating. Emma's mind reeled. Could it be true? Was the woman she'd known as her mother actually her kidnapper? Why would Margaret Clark take her? And who was Thomas? I need to see my moth. I need to see Mary Clark, Emma said. I need answers. Thomas is sick. He needs me. Thomas Clark is Mary's biological son, Sarah said gently. He was born about 2 years after she arrived in Ashford. Emma, honey, you've been taking care of a woman who stole you from your real family. The weight of this revelation nearly dropped Emma to her knees. Everything she'd sacrificed, her freedom, her youth, 5 years of her life, had been based on a lie. The brother she'd sold herself to save wasn't even her real brother. The mother she'd done everything for was a kidnapper. William Hartley must have seen something break in Emma's expression because he stepped forward, and this time he didn't hesitate. He wrapped his arms around his daughter for the first time in 17 years. You're safe now, he whispered. Whatever happened, whoever lied to you, you're safe now, you're coming home. Emma felt something crack open inside her. A door she didn't know had been locked. She'd spent so long being strong, being responsible, being the one who sacrificed. For the first time in months, maybe years, she let herself cry. The next hours moved in a blur. William Hartley made phone calls. Within an hour, the sheriff arrived with deputies. Garrett was taken in for questioning regarding labor trafficking and exploitation. The contracts of dozens of workers, including Emma's, were suspended pending investigation. We need to go to Ashford, Emma insisted. I need to confront her. I need to understand why. William wanted to refuse, to take his daughter far away from the woman who'd stolen her. But he saw the determination in Emma's face, his determination, the Hartley stubbornness his wife had always teased him about. He nodded. They traveled to Ashford in William's car, a luxury vehicle that drew stares in the poor neighborhood where Emma had grown up. The house looked shabbier than Emma remembered, smaller and more run down. Had she really lived here? Had this ever been home? Mary Clark opened the door, her face draining of color when she saw Emma standing beside William Hartley. She knew immediately that her lies had unraveled. Emma, let me explain, she started. My name is Charlotte, Emma said, her voice stronger than she felt. Charlotte Hartley. And you're going to tell me everything, starting with why you stole me. They sat in the small, cramped living room. Thomas was asleep in the next room, his fever broken, unaware of the confrontation happening feet away. Mary Clark's hands shook as she poured water from a pitcher with a crack down the side. I never meant for it to go this far, she began. I was your nanny, your father worked constantly. Your mother had died in childbirth, you were alone so much, and I loved you like you were mine. So you took her. William's voice was ice. You destroyed my life, made me think my daughter was dead, all because you thought you could love her better. I was young and stupid, Mary's voice broke. I had just found out I was pregnant, unmarried, desperate. I convinced myself you'd have other children, that you wouldn't miss one. I told myself Charlotte would have a better life away from the pressure of wealth, that she'd be happier. You thought coal mines and starvation was better. Emma's laugh was bitter. You thought selling me into forced labor was better than my real life. I didn't know, Mary cried. When Thomas got sick, I was desperate. I thought the mine would just be temporary work, that they'd treat you fairly. I was wrong about everything. I've been wrong from the start. You stole my daughter's childhood, William said, standing. You made her believe lies. You're going to face justice for this. Wait, Emma said, surprising everyone. She looked at Thomas sleeping in the next room, at this boy who'd called her sister, who she'd loved and cared for. What happens to Thomas? Mary's face crumpled. He has no one else. I have no family. If I go to prison... Emma felt torn in two. Thomas was innocent in all this. He was a sick child who'd done nothing wrong, but he also wasn't her responsibility. She'd already given up so much based on lies. He'll be taken care of, William said quietly, seeing his daughter's internal struggle. I'll make sure of it, but that doesn't absolve her of what she's done. The sheriff arrived to take Mary's statement. As she was led away, she looked back at Emma with eyes full of regret and grief. "I did love you," she whispered. "That part was never a lie. I'm sorry for everything else." Emma didn't respond. She couldn't. The woman had loved her in her broken, selfish way. But love without truth was just another kind of cage. Thomas woke as the commotion grew. Emma went to him, kneeling beside his bed. He looked so small, so fragile. "Emma, what's happening? Where's Ma?" "Thomas, I have to go away for a while," Emma said gently, brushing his hair back like she'd done 1,000 times. "But you're going to be okay. Someone will take care of you." "Are you leaving because of me? Because I got sick?" "No, sweetheart. This has nothing to do with you." She hugged him, this little boy who'd been as much a victim of Mary's lies as anyone. "You get better, okay? Keep getting stronger." As they drove away from Ashford, Emma watched the town disappear in the side mirror. That chapter of her life was closing, but she had no idea what the next one would hold. "Tell me about my real mother," she said to William as they drove toward Riverton. "Tell me about Charlotte Hartley's life before it was stolen." The Hartley estate sprawled across 50 acres on the outskirts of Riverton, a mansion that looked like something from a fairy tale Emma had never dared to dream. As they approached through iron gates, she felt increasingly like an imposter. She'd scrubbed the coal dust from her skin, but she still felt like worker 174, not Charlotte Hartley, heiress. "Your mother, Elizabeth, was the most brilliant woman I ever met," William said as they drove up the circular driveway. "She was an architect. She designed this house, actually. Wanted every detail to be perfect for our family." "She died when I was born?" Emma asked softly. "Complications during delivery. The doctors tried everything." William's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "She held you once, named you Charlotte after her grandmother. Then she was gone. I had one perfect thing left from her, you, and then Margaret took that too." The house staff lined up to greet them, their faces showing carefully controlled shock. The missing daughter was legend in this household. Some of them had worked here since before the kidnapping. Mrs. Patterson, the head housekeeper, burst into tears at the sight of Emma. "Little Charlotte! Oh, my dear girl! We never stopped hoping." Emma was overwhelmed by the attention, the luxury, the sheer size of everything. Her room, Charlotte's room, had been preserved like a shrine, a nursery frozen in time, waiting for a baby who never came home. "We can redecorate," William said quickly, seeing her expression. "Make it yours, whatever you want." "I don't know what I want," Emma admitted. "I don't know who Charlotte Hartley is supposed to be." "Then you'll figure it out," he said simply. "You have time." But time was complicated. The news of Charlotte Hartley's return spread through Riverton like wildfire. Within days, reporters camped outside the gates. William's business associates called to congratulate him. Society matrons who'd ignored him during his grief suddenly wanted to host welcome home parties. Emma met her grandmother, Eleanor Hartley, a formidable woman of 70, who examined Emma with sharp eyes before pulling her into a fierce hug. "You have your mother's backbone," Eleanor declared. "I can see it in how you hold yourself. The mines didn't break you." "They tried," Emma said, "but you're here. That's what matters." Emma began learning about the Hartley business empire, manufacturing, real estate, investments. William was worth millions, and all of it would one day be hers. The thought terrified her. 3 weeks ago, she'd been shoveling coal for pennies. Now people called her Miss Hartley and asked her opinion on things she didn't understand. Education became the first challenge. Emma had basic schooling, but nothing compared to what Charlotte Hartley should have had. William hired tutors who came daily to fill in the gaps. Mathematics, literature, history, etiquette. Emma absorbed it all with the same fierce determination that had gotten her through the mines. "You're a quick study," her mathematics tutor, Professor Adams, noted with approval. "Have you considered university?" University. The word felt foreign. Girls like Emma Clark didn't go to university, but Charlotte Hartley could. "I want to study business," Emma decided. "I want to understand how to run my father's empire, how to protect workers, ensure fair wages, change things from the inside." William beamed with pride when she told him. Your mother would have loved that. She always said wealth was a responsibility, not just a privilege. But not everyone was happy about Charlotte's return. At a dinner party thrown by Eleanor to reintroduce Emma to society, she met her father's business partner, James Morrison, and his son, Richard. "Quite the story," Richard said smoothly, his eyes calculating as they appraised Emma. "From the mines to the mansion, like a fairy tale." "Fairy tales usually skip the part about forced labor and betrayal," Emma replied coolly. James Morrison was less subtle. "William, we need to discuss the succession plans. With Charlotte's return, certain arrangements need updating." Emma learned that during her absence, James had positioned himself as William's likely heir for the business. Richard had been groomed to take over. Charlotte's return disrupted those plans. "My daughter is my heir," William said firmly. "That's not negotiable, James." Tension crackled through the dining room. Emma realized she'd walked into more than a personal drama. There was a business war brewing. Later that night, Emma overheard James and Richard talking in the library. "We can't let some coal-stained urchin destroy everything we've built," Richard hissed. "Father, you've run Hartley Industries for the past decade." William was barely functional with grief. "Now this girl shows up and suddenly she's going to inherit everything?" "Patience," James counseled. "She's uneducated, unprepared. She'll make mistakes. We document those mistakes, show the board she's unfit. William will have to see reason." Emma stepped into the library, making both men jump. "Or," she said pleasantly, "I learn everything I need to know, prove I'm more than capable, and you both remember that loyalty to my father should matter more than greed." She walked away, leaving them speechless, but she knew she'd made enemies. The real test came when William brought Emma to Hartley Industries headquarters. The building was a monument to her family's legacy, 20 stories of steel and glass in downtown Riverton. "Everyone will be watching you," William warned as they rode the elevator to his office. "Some hope you'll succeed. Others are waiting for you to fail." The executive meeting was brutal. Emma sat beside her father, taking notes as men twice her age discussed quarterly reports, expansion plans, and labor disputes. When they turned to a proposed wage cut for factory workers to improve margins, Emma spoke up. "We can't cut wages," she said firmly. "The workers are already struggling. I know, I've lived it. Cut executive bonuses instead. Reduce overhead. Don't balance books on the backs of people who can't afford it." Silence fell. James Morrison's smile was condescending. "Miss Hartley, with all respect, business requires hard decisions. Sentimentality doesn't pay dividends." "Neither does a workforce too exhausted and underpaid to be productive," Emma shot back. "I've seen what happens when you squeeze workers too hard. They get desperate. They make mistakes. Quality suffers. You lose more in the long run than you save short term." She laid out an alternative plan she'd drafted with Professor Adams, redistributing costs without cutting worker pay. Several board members looked impressed. James Morrison looked furious. William squeezed her hand under the table. "Well argued," he whispered. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She wandered the mansion, ending up in the portrait gallery. Paintings of Hartley ancestors lined the walls, including one of her mother Elizabeth, beautiful and brilliant, forever frozen at 28. "I'm trying," Emma whispered to the painting. "I don't know if I'm Charlotte or Emma anymore. I don't know if I belong here, but I'm trying." "You belong here more than anyone," Eleanor Hartley said from the doorway. "I've been watching you, child. You have your mother's fire and your father's heart. But you also have something they didn't. You've seen both sides of life, the top and the bottom. That makes you dangerous to people like James Morrison." "He's trying to undermine me." "Of course he is. You threaten his plans. But you have something he'll never have: legitimacy. You're a Hartley by blood and by spirit. Don't let anyone make you forget that." Emma received a letter a week later from Sarah, the woman who'd helped her at the mine. The investigation had shut down Garrett's operation permanently. Dozens of workers had been freed from fraudulent contracts. Sarah herself had been reunited with a daughter she'd been separated from for 5 years. "You saved us," Sarah wrote. "By being brave enough to claim your truth, you freed all of us. That's what real power is for, helping people who can't help themselves." Emma showed the letter to William. "I want to do more." The mines, the factories, there are workers everywhere being exploited. We have the resources to fight that. Then we will, William promised, together. The Morrison situation came to a head when Emma discovered James had been quietly embezzling from the company for years, hiding it in complex financial arrangements. She found it while reviewing old contracts with Professor Adams, patterns that didn't make sense unless someone was stealing. "Father," she said, laying out the evidence, "James has been robbing you blind." William's face went ashen as he reviewed the documents, years of theft hidden in plain sight while he'd been too grief-stricken to pay close attention. The confrontation was ugly. James denied everything until the auditors William brought in confirmed it all. Richard tried to claim ignorance, but his signature appeared on too many suspicious documents. "You gave me everything," James said bitterly to William. "I ran this company while you mourned, and now you'd throw me to the wolves for her, a girl who's been back 5 minutes. You stole from me," William said quietly, "from my daughter's inheritance, from the workers whose wages you cut while lining your pockets. Get out. If you're not arrested by end of week, consider yourself lucky." The Morrisons left in disgrace, but Emma felt no triumph, only sadness. How many relationships in this world of wealth were poisoned by greed? 3 months after her return, Emma Charlotte Hartley stood before the board of Hartley Industries and presented her first major initiative, the Hartley Workers' Foundation. Using a portion of her inheritance and matching funds from her father, she proposed a program that would provide education assistance, health care, and fair wage guarantees to all Hartley employees. "This isn't charity," she explained to the skeptical board members. "It's an investment. Healthy, educated workers are productive workers. They innovate, they stay loyal, they build better products, and it's the right thing to do. We have a responsibility to the people who make our success possible." The vote passed. Not unanimously. Some board members still resisted, but it passed. Emma had her first victory. The foundation's first act was to pay off the fraudulent debts of workers trapped in operations like Garrett's mine. Emma personally traveled to interview each worker, hear their stories, help them restart their lives. Each person she helped was a piece of her own past redeemed. She also ensured Thomas Clark received proper medical care and education. Mary Clark was serving a reduced sentence for kidnapping. Emma had asked the prosecutor for leniency, unable to hate a woman who, however wrongly, had loved her. "You're too forgiving," Eleanor said, when Emma visited Thomas at his new foster home. "Maybe," Emma replied, watching Thomas laugh with other children, healthy now, thriving. "But I spent too long being angry at the wrong things. Mary was wrong, but she was also desperate. The real crime is a system that makes people that desperate." Emma enrolled in university, studying business and labor economics. She was older than most students, but younger than some. Her story was known, the mining heiress they called her, but she insisted on being treated like everyone else. She made friends, real ones, who cared about Emma Charlotte for who she was, not what she was worth. She dated occasionally, though her standards were high. She'd seen too much of life to settle for shallow charm. One young man, Daniel Chen, a law student passionate about workers' rights, caught her attention. Their first conversation lasted 4 hours, debating fair labor practices over coffee that went cold. "You're different from other wealthy people I've met," Daniel said. "I wasn't always wealthy," Emma reminded him, "and I never forget that. Every time I see a worker, I remember I was worker 174. That stays with me." William watched his daughter blossom with pride and occasional wonder. She was everything he'd hoped, everything Elizabeth would have wanted. "Do you ever regret it?" Emma asked him one evening. "If I'd never been taken, I'd have grown up soft, sheltered. Would I have cared about workers' rights? Would I have fought for change?" "Yes," William said without hesitation. "Your mother would have taught you. She believed in justice, in using privilege to help others. That's not about whether you suffered. That's about character. You have that character regardless. But the suffering shaped me." "It did. But I'd trade every insight you gained to have given you a safe, happy childhood. As your father, I'd choose your happiness over your wisdom every time." Emma hugged him, this man who'd never stopped searching, never stopped hoping. "I'm happy now, that counts for something." The Hartley Workers' Foundation expanded beyond Emma's initial vision. Within a year, they'd helped over 500 workers escape exploitative contracts. They'd established education programs in 12 cities. They'd pushed for legislative changes in labor law. Emma testified before the state legislature, her story capturing headlines. "I was lucky," she told the assembled lawmakers. "I had a father with resources to find me. But thousands of workers have no one fighting for them. They're trapped in systems designed to keep them powerless. That has to change." The reforms passed. New protections for contract workers, stricter penalties for labor trafficking, mandatory oversight of mining and factory operations. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. On the anniversary of her return, Emma stood in the portrait gallery again. A new painting had been added, her own positioned between her parents. The artist had captured something essential, a young woman who'd seen darkness but chose to create light. Eleanor found her there. "Your mother would be so proud." "I wish I'd known her." "You carry her forward. In everything you do, she lives again." Eleanor paused, then added, "You know, there's been talk. Several board members think you should take a more active role in company leadership, perhaps CEO in a few years. I'm 21, I'm still in university, and you're already changing the world. Age is just a number, child. Vision is what matters." Emma considered this. CEO of Hartley Industries. The power to enact real change, to ensure fair treatment, to prove that businesses could profit without exploitation. It was terrifying and thrilling. "I'd need to finish my education first, learn more. I won't be a figurehead." "No one expects that," Eleanor smiled. "We expect a revolution, and you're exactly the one to lead it." That summer, Emma returned to Ashford for the first time since leaving. The mine was closed, replaced by a new facility that the Hartley Foundation had funded, a job training centre teaching sustainable skills to former mine workers. She walked through the old sorting house, now empty and silent. This was where Worker 174 had existed, where Emma Clark had suffered. But it was also where she'd learned her own strength. Sarah was there, now employed as a supervisor at the training centre. She hugged Emma tightly. "Look what you built from ashes," Sarah said, gesturing at the centre. "All these people with new chances because you refused to stay broken." "We built it," Emma corrected. "All of us who survived. We're the proof that people can change their stories." Emma also visited Mary Clark in prison. The woman had aged years in months, her face lined with regret. "Thomas writes me letters," Mary said quietly. "He's doing well. His foster family is kind. He talks about you sometimes, remembers you as his sister." "He was my brother when I thought he was," Emma said. "That love was real, even if the circumstances were lies." "I'm so sorry, Charlotte." "Emma, whoever you need to be." "I'm both now. Emma, Charlotte. I don't have to choose." Emma paused, then added, "You were wrong to take me. You destroyed lives with that choice, but you also loved me when you didn't have to. That's complicated, and I'm learning to live with complicated. You're a better person than I deserved. Maybe. But I'm trying to be the person I needed when I was alone and scared, for everyone who's still alone and scared." Emma graduated university with highest honors. Her thesis on ethical business practices was published in several journals. Job offers flooded in, but she had only one answer: Hartley Industries, where she could implement her ideas. At 25, Emma Charlotte Hartley became the youngest CEO in the company's history. Her first board meeting was memorable. She arrived early, greeted every person by name, and presented a 5-year plan that promised both profit and principle. "We're going to prove something," she told them, "that doing good and doing well aren't mutually exclusive. That workers are assets to invest in, not costs to minimize. That a company can be profitable without being predatory. We're going to build something my mother would be proud of, and something Worker 174 would have fought for." The plan worked. Hartley Industries became a model for ethical business, attracting the best talent, earning customer loyalty, and yes, making significant profits. Other companies watched and learned. Change rippled outward. Emma expanded the foundation internationally, helping workers in countries with even fewer protections than she'd had. She used her story, her platform, her resources to fight for people who couldn't fight for themselves. She married Daniel Chen in a small ceremony, Small by Hartley standards anyway. They honeymooned by visiting foundation sites, meeting workers whose lives had changed, hearing stories of hope that echoed her own. "We're building something bigger than us," Daniel said as they watched a new education center open in a country that had never valued workers' dignity. "We're building the world we needed," Emma corrected, "one worker at a time." Years later, when Emma's own daughter asked about the small crescent birthmark on her shoulder, Emma told her the whole story. The mines, the suffering, the lies, the reunion, the revolution. "But weren't you angry?" her daughter asked. "At the woman who took you? At everything you lost?" "Sometimes," Emma admitted, "but anger without purpose is just poison. I chose to transform my anger into action, to make meaning from suffering. That's the real power, not wealth or position, but the choice to create light from darkness." She looked at her daughter, at the portrait of Elizabeth Hartley on the wall, at the empire she'd built on principles of justice and dignity. Worker 174 had become Charlotte Hartley, and Charlotte Hartley had become someone who fought for every worker 174 still out there. The mine had tried to break her. Instead, it had forged her into exactly who she needed to be. Someone who understood both privilege and pain, someone who could bridge the gap between the powerful and the powerless, someone who proved that where you start doesn't determine where you finish. Emma Charlotte Hartley's story wasn't about being saved. It was about saving herself, then using that salvation to save others. And that story was still being written, one changed life at a time. If you enjoyed this story, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring tales. We'd love to know where in the world you're watching from. Drop your country or city in the comments below. Your support helps us create more content like this. Thank you for watching.